Hello, lovely ladies and gentlemen, such as all those in the chat making pretty hearts. To you I say, I heart you all so hard. Look at this bulbous cardioid. Yeah. Oh, yes. Tee-hee. Sexy? Good. Okay, cool. Stepping into part number 3, we're now going to watch the final instances of TitaN doing his amazing tactical play, this nonstop warpprism harass that has turned out to be oh so effective on Shakur's plateau. My throat is a little dry, but you know what? I will power on. Certainly not quite as bad as when my brother casted at BWC with a fractured, possibly broken rib. I don't... You know... Because I actually know what the conversation was like at the doctor's office. He did a little scan and said, well, yeah, I mean, it's at the very least fractured. And Nick went, oh, well, can I travel? And the guy's like, well, I wouldn't recommend it. You'll be in extreme pain. And Nick's like, all right, give me painkillers. And then he got on an airplane and came to the BattleNet World Championships on painkillers in huge pain with a busted rib. Nice. I can cast with a dry throat. Let's step to it. And sometimes the painkillers had questionable impacts on his ability to focus and cast. What a hero! Like a boss, man mode! So, of course, these types of little counter swings are going to be the bane of TitaN's existence, always leaving behind a small pack of zealots to deal with all the issues that could potentially arise. And in low econ situations, so long as you conserve workers, you're generally in good shape. Workers are more important than bases in low econ situations. So here's some interesting stuffs that begin to develop. We have already built the majority of the tech that we need. We have our Twilight. We have pretty much all the upgrades we want. I would suggest getting the ground armor level 2, but you know. Regardless, we have dumped all the gas that we really need to. So in low econ games, even when we do have a pretty reasonable number of sentries, and 7 is more than enough in late game situations, we end up with this excessive gas. So suddenly transitioning into Templar becomes a lot easier than transitioning into Colossus. Colossus requires a lot of money to be able to do this. Templar requires a lot of gas to be able to do this. TitaN doing more smart things. When the Zealots have to engage in battle, he pulls them away. So great. The hero warpprism is nowhere to be found. No, it's somewhere to be found. Where is it? I just passed it. Hold on, seriously, where is that thing? Ah! Found it. Cool. So now we're back in a familiar position. We have ourselves... Oh, look at this. Templar Archives. Excellent. Very easy to transition into that. TitaN again has this like center area as a place to worry about, so that's fine. We're just going to stick to these little slits over here, and we're going to try to get ourselves into an oh so delightful, glorious position. Very easy to have engagements here. Remember, all the pullbacks, I mean, TitaN could have pulled back here and hopped onto the other side, but these locations are always good. Now would have been a great time to actually warp prism drop right there, but, you know. No big deal. This is one of these passive moments where, you know, you don't really have to do much of anything, but hey, Templar. Templar with Storm, actually. This is cool, because for the most part, TitaN has been looking for favorable angles. For getting his opponent out of position, for things like this. What TitaN hasn't been doing is big, bad attacks at the front. Bad as in badass, not as in, like, egregious. And, oh, let me just note something. Curious is a frickin' on-the-fly baller. Look at that. Contaminating? Oh, holy sick. Holy sick! Oh! So we have now a nice endgame army. And this was super slick. Ah! Baited out a bunch of infested swarm eggs. Pretty sweet. Pretty good. Sadly, we lose an observer. Bleh. And now TitaN does the unthinkable. He engages straight on into a big roach force with lots of infested Terran eggs. But keep in mind, one storm can kill off infested Terran eggs. And you'd ordinarily think that a Protoss would be running away, but not TitaN. Not with them storms. Burn the energy. So with the sickest arcs, and here's an interesting fact. Infested Terrans are very vulnerable to large concaves because they move so slowly, they'll almost always get the worst possible concave. So this means you can get the guys at the back to not fire for a pretty considerable amount of time by getting large concave arcs. So impressively, TitaN is able to burst through this wall of stuff. And this is continuing to sort of keep the ZerG player on a layer tech. I mean, there's pretty much not going to be Broodlords ever coming out with this stuff going on. Let me get the nice expand. The very cautious approach up to the high ground. And because we are baller and we held the center watchtower, because counterattacks are scary, we're in good shape. And then pops up to the high ground just to force more infested swarm eggs, and then just backs away. And now that he sees most of the army here, and has done his damage, he can just pull back and defend. In nice, happy time types of ways. Nothing, I think, noteworthy is going to be happening here for a little bit. This is just kind of unfortunate that we're dealing with this. The stuff I have to deal with as a Protoss player. More infested Terrans. It's a good unit. I don't think that this really highlights any positional significance. This is just Infestors being a good unit. And again, I would strongly recommend +2 armor against those infested Terrans because it helps a buttload. And it looks like we finally have lost the warpprism, but of course TitaN ain't gonna stick with any of that. We should be rebuilding one in a moment. Come on, come on, come on. There it is. Alright. Attacking these alleyways, I think, is pretty straightforward. Again, I do like the fact that we were able to transition to Storm so easily. And a lot of the reason that Storm sucks, in the general public opinion, is that we are generally up against a Hive-Tech ZerG that has, like, Broodlord Infestor. And Storm is of limited utility there. But against mid-game armies, like bunched-up infested Terrans and Roaches, it's quite good. And this aggressive style sort of affords that. It creates it nicely. So this is a pretty critical piece of terrain to control, the joint between the two bases. So TitaN just, again, parks himself there, waits till he sees something that's weak, goes this way, sees the infested Terrans move that way, does warpprism drop this way. And is this the big moment? Oh yeah, this moment was super cool. TitaN saw all the infested Terrans moving in burrow across the map. So TitaN just wants to defend. In fact, TitaN is happy killing this expansion and this expansion repeatedly, and then just winning with a superior expo count. There's no need to really drill too far up into one base or the other. But here was a really sick play. I was talking about this at the start of the game, that Blink and warpprism works very nicely together. So TitaN pulls all these units back because he's like, oh my god, I can't handle this dude if he ends up doing the huge counterattack. But then TitaN sees that there's all these units headed up to the top side. And he can just identify, should I run away? Actually, let me back up to here. He can easily identify, do these Blink Stalkers need to run away? And do these Zealots need to hop up in the warpprism and run away? Or, is that a small enough army that I could just warp in a huge pack of Blink Stalkers and take it out? Which I just thought this play was magnificent. I loved this play. And then, of course, one Zealot to do the cleanup. Infested Terrans, good! Infested Terrans, bad. WW. Whew. Doesn't that just make you want to go play Protoss? All the Terran players are like, yeah, I've had that feeling for a few months now. Doesn't that just make you want to go play some Protoss right now and do some warpprism usage? I thought that was really cool. Let's go ahead and recap. In part 1, we saw TitaN went for the 4-gate opening with some regular stalkers, and this forced Curious to make a lot of additional units. Kind of freaked him out a little bit, and it also delayed Curious's lair quite a bit. If Curious had gone for a fast lair... Oh, sorry, the water was way down there. If Curious had gone for a fast layer, maybe would have killed off with the 4-gate. But given that we didn't, we then transitioned right up into some warpprism harassment play. Going stalkers with blink. We got our 2-1 upgrades quite quickly, and then we did some amazing warpprism tactics to gain the edge. In part 2, we got to see all these tactics nonstop used to identify where our opponent was weak. And in fact, in the course of the game, I will even note that we killed off 96 workers. It's a pretty good amount. Pretty good. A lot of harassment, a lot of tactical maneuvering made strong by the fact that Blink and warpprism works well together, and we can break those Blink Stalkers away from our main force and have the Immortals and Sentries in nice, tight, closed passages. On a map, for instance, like Taldry Malter, it's very difficult for our Immortal Sentry to break away from our Blink Stalkers because we don't really have a good place for our Immortal Sentry to hang out safely. So, yeah, so that's the one thing that I would sort of caution for other maps. But cool, we got to see some great tactics. And then in part 3, we saw some pretty key moves, pulling back to defend the expansions, only killing off near expansions from our opponents, not trying to drill all the way in. And I think most sweetly of all, by being so aggressive, we get all our tech structures up early, we get all our upgrades up early, which allows us to transition into Templar Storm, thereby giving us the needed answer to the infested Terran swarms that we saw. Oh. And then we even got to see some sweet mass warping plays, which I just thought was great. So thank you to TitaN for playing that awesome game. I hope to see more TitaN games in the future and to review more of them just because I think he's an excellent, excellent player. Absolutely deserves his spot at that BWC. So let's take some questions. If you'd be so kind as to begin a question with Dear Day 9, that way the infamous question grabber, created by none other than Mark Ochoa himself, I'd be happy. Question grabber is on, I thought. Maybe not. Maybe not. Corson says, Dear Day 9, after TitaN lost the majority of his army, why didn't Curious just attack with his roaches and defend with lings and spines? Let's go ahead and take a look. There's a couple of moments that that could be referencing. I assume it's right here at the 16-minute mark when this was happening. So this was a potential scary moment when really the majority of TitaN's army was super dead. And he was trying to do these like little tactics in the main, but he ran out of juice with his warping in. So I think Curious was reasonable to sort of do the retreat there. So the question is, why not just swing back right now? For one, we've lost a lot of workers. And in fact, we have 43. And as a ZerG user, it's very easy to sort of default and go, all right, well, let me get my drone count up, rather than just going for it. Also, with the drone count so low, we really can't even afford spine crawlers at all. So spine crawlers really aren't an option. It's just units we can use to defend. But let's go ahead and still ask the same question. Why not just attack here, straight up? Well, the answer is that our player, TitaN, will soon have 3 Immortals. Can easily get those 3 Immortals up. More importantly, this harassment from TitaN is non-trivially scary. I mean, for instance, if a warpprism comes in and doesn't really do any warp inning, then we can pretty much just send some infested Terrans over there to do that sort of thing. But here, Curious checked up there. But Curious would actually not be able to break this back here. Why? Because we have enough energy to do a backup warp in of 5 sentries. We have plenty of time. TitaN's actually in great shape with these 3 Immortals. But the fact that this harassment sort of kept on keeping on, Curious... Ooh, this is actually an interesting thing to know. You, again, our lovely question asker wondered why Curious didn't just counterattack. Well, because Curious, like any smart player, is saying, let me check for expos, let me check for expos. Because up to this moment in the game, Curious has actually not crossed this center line. He has not had a big attack go mid-map to attack his opponent, so Curious has no idea what the hell's going on. So he would run the risk of attacking directly into the unknown. And what your average ZerG player thinks in a spot like that is, well, I may as well just get up on the drone count then. So it looks like Curious just decided, yeah, you know what, I'm ahead on expos. But thanks to that observer placement from TitaN, he gets the opportunity to see how weak the main is and can begin doing damage. Again, 43 total Duders get killed off. So I think that Curious just literally didn't feel that safe. And plus 0-0 roaches up against, what, 3-1 units? TitaN could actually take that with this force. This force right here would have been more than enough to deal with 34 roaches and 8 no energy infestors. So that's my answer to that question. Wha. Okay, from T Squirrel, Day 9, what are the advantages of having High Templar versus Colossus? So for one, no matter what tech you go down, Templar or Colossus, you have to ask, do I have the appropriate infrastructure for this? Like, if you used Immortals to defend in the mid game, it's very easy to go Colossus in the late game. If you used a bunch of Sentry Stalker to defend in the mid game, it's a lot easier to transition into Templar in the late game because you already have a lot of gateways. Also, one of the advantages for Templar is that it's very easy to pop into Templar quickly, just due to the fact that you can warp in multiple Templar at once, and Storm only takes 80 seconds without... only takes 80 seconds without Chrono Boost to finish. So with Chrono Boost, it takes 1 minute to finish. So it's very easy to just sort of slam out like 8 Templar. Colossus, on the other hand, scale linearly. You can only get them one at a time. So you kind of have to start building up the Colossus force early. If I'm playing aggressively, I much more so prefer to transition into High Templar, just because it's easier to sort of get that sudden bump up. Both of them work well against infested Terrans, against Zerglings, against packed stuff. But especially if your opponent is doing one of these like only Infestor mid-game, like Leenock, Mr. Infestor Gadget. If he's doing like an only Infestor mid-game, I do prefer Templar, just due to the fact that mostly I'll Storm, but if I can get some feedbacks in, yeah. Yeah, sure. Oh, great question by Pew Pip Blue, or PUE PPI Blue. I don't even know how to say it. It says, Dana, what do you think about, rather than going for Infestor, sticking with Roach and then going for the Spire tech, thereby getting Corruptors to shoot down the Warp Prism and that sort of thing? What makes that a real tough choice for Curious is that TitaN is building a force that can win in large endgame engagements. He's building a fully upgraded Blink Stalker, Immortal, Sentry force. That scales very nicely into the late game. So if we did go down the Corruptor route, we would shut down the harassment, and then what? We would have almost no answer to a direct frontal push from TitaN. It almost forces your opponent to either go Ling heavy, or to go Infestor heavy in that mid-game. So I like that quite a bit. I'm going to take one more question. One more question. Ah, yes, from Samumba. Day 9, why not kill ZerG sooner? Protoss seems so defensive in the late game. Here is one of the most important concepts in all of competitive gaming, the concept of the marginal advantage. When you have a lead, your goal should not be to extend the lead. It should be to maintain that lead. Absolutely critical concept. Very simple, but still it's very easy to misapply. To think, well, if I can win now, then I'm going to win now. Well, no, you don't want to try to hurry up and win. You want to guarantee that there's no way your opponent can get back into the game. And there's a number of moves that TitaN did that are like that concept just like totally manifested. The marginal advantage manifest. So this attack in particular I thought was absolutely brilliant. We kill off this, we shove up here, annihilating him, and then we pull right all the way back over here. Why not just shove up here for a win? It's very easy to get caught off guard a little bit here. It's very easy to start pushing up to think you're in a good position, and then for a couple of fungals here and some infested Terrans to really ruin your day. And if you don't believe me, I want to come right back to this moment, and I'll show you what happens when an engagement can be executed favorably for the ZerG player. I'm skipping ahead a little bit here. Remember this attack at the start of the game, how sweet this looked? This looks real nice. And I will actually note what is up here. The combined army for ZerG is some roaches, an infester, and there you go. Yeah, that's it. But then all of a sudden, we get some infestors hatch, the fungal growths pop out. We start to lose grip over this expansion. The rest of the reinforcements arrive. Ugh. So if we're coming over here to this 22-minute mark, and we're seeing this big push and asking why didn't he just zip in for the kill? Killing off expansions and then pulling back and playing conservatively is almost always going to be a winning play. For instance, right now, not only would I strongly suggest pulling back and defending, but also I would suggest halting on the warpprism harass until another target arises. There's really not a target if he just has his main and natural. Not even really that far ahead. Or even, let me come back to right here. Why not just sweep up into the main base to kill him off? Well, there's actually a big problem with doing attacks at the main base in the late game. There's no money here, so we're not really preventing anything by doing this. If this whole blue army, if this whole blue ball was right there, dealing damage, then all these roaches would have free reign over here. All these roaches would have free reign over here. And Curious would just build an infestation pit, a roach warren, a bunch of spines, and would now have a fresh defended expansion, while as Protoss we might have lost our expansion. In other words, us attacking the main runs the risk of sacrificing our only mining base and leaving ZerG with the mining base. Late game attacks on the main are not particularly strong. And yeah, knocking out production is not that mind-blowing, especially when he's relying on a not production-focused army. And that about wraps that up. I'm done. That was fun. There will be no daily tomorrow. There will be a daily on Sunday and on Monday and on Tuesday, as well as Wednesday and Thursday of next week. It's going to be a full week of daily. I'm thrilled. Oh! And honestly, I would encourage you to go over to the day9.tv site, go into the StarCraft 2 General Forum, and I don't know if the thread's there yet. If it's not, you can just create one, of normal daily suggestions. I get a lot of suggestions for topics like, hey, I saw this great game at this event. Can you do a daily on it? That would be a great thread as a resource. And then you can even respond to each other and sort of check out that sort of thing. I will also note that if you do suggest a game, don't just suggest it. Include a link to the replay. A link to the replay, excuse me. Because almost always, I don't have any sort of special access to games. Like GSL games, I have zero access to. I can never do an analysis of a GSL game unless they give it to me. BWC is nice because Blizzard uploaded all those. Yeah. Hope you have yourself a Merry Thanksgiving. Eat a lot of turkey and buy all the games on Steam. Num 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 num.